Good morning and welcome back to Breakfast with Leanna, part 4, where I tell you things that no one else will tell you and you most certainly don't want to hear. So today I want to talk about fear-based decision making because this is something that has been grating on my nerves for a long time. And I'm not at home in the kitchen, I am in my car. So that's life. But this has been something that I've been really thinking about a lot lately, in terms of all the things happening in the world. It occurred to me, and this morning on the way to school, my kids and I were having a conversation, and my daughter was talking about a book that she was reading. She was reading for school. It happens to be a book about the Holocaust, but in the book, there's a little boy, and he disobeys his parents and goes exploring in exactly the place that his parents tell him not to because they don't want him to know what's happening in the outside world. So they keep a pretty tight shield on the children, and the boy decides that he wants to know why. And so he goes and does the very thing he was told not to do. And I think that there's some level of human nature in that, right? That if somebody's trying to keep us from doing something, we automatically say, well, why are you trying to keep me from doing that? And then we go and do that thing. And it's something that as a parent, I know, and try to balance between and really explain to my children when there's something I really don't want them to do, why I don't want them to do it. But I raise my children to not be disrespectful, but to challenge authority all the time. There's no one, no teacher, no adult, no parent who inherently knows more than they do simply because they are older or because they have a degree or because of their position. You must challenge authority, and that's how I've raised my children. And so I expect them to question me. If they question all other authority, I expect them to question me. That's not a sign of disrespect. That's a sign of free thought. It's how they figure out how to be good adults. And I think we've gotten away from that in this world of complacency where we teach children to be drones and not think for themselves and just follow directions and march in line. And we are training people to just do as they're told. And so as we look at all the things happening right now in the world in terms of the election and the pandemic and mask wearing and vaccine taking and all of those other things, right? You have to wonder what's wrong with people that they aren't trying to dig deeper and find out more before just going along with the pack. This is a real problem for me. I do not understand, cannot for the life of me fathom why you would want your children, let alone yourself, to do as you're told. And I really, really struggle with this concept that so many people think that virtue signaling or looking good to the outside world by pretending to give a shit about other people and by simply donning a mask means anything at all or is any way valid when the science is very clear to support the contrary. So what makes people do that? And it goes to every aspect of our lives. And, just in general, the concept of doing as you're told. Why would anybody do that? And I said to my daughter this morning when she said, the question that she had to answer was, what does that say about his character that he would do what his parents told him not to do anyway? And I said, well, to me, it's inquisitive, right? He wants to know, he's questioning, he wants to understand, and clearly feels like something's being kept from him and he deserves to know. Every other person in the world right now should feel like things are being kept from them and that they deserve to know the truth and should be out there digging for what that is. Whether you agree with me or not, it's your job and your responsibility and your... as a human being, it's your responsibility to look at every decision you make, every action you take, everything you believe that creates your belief system and question it and explore it and challenge it over and over and over again, right? Not just take things at face value and be content with that. So I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and me not understanding this and wondering, how this happens. How do we get to this place? And she said that there are two major reasons that people make decisions like this, right? One is fear. And we're inherently manipulated by our fear. But to me, fear is an invalid thing, because fear, whether you believe that fear is false evidence appearing real, or you believe that fear is, just a manifestation of the unknown, fear has no place in terms of decision making. We cannot biologically make good decisions when we're afraid. We always make bad decisions when we're afraid, when our cortisol is high. So anytime you feel afraid, that's not a time to make a decision. It's a time to begin making yourself look for rational thought and sort through details and require that your brain shift from emotional to logical so that you can think more clearly and make a better decision. We know that the human body is incapable of making a good choice or a good decision when it's in duress. That seems simple enough, I think, personally. But so many people live their lives predominantly based out of what they fear. And that's why we live in a world where people make really terrible decisions all the time and do stupid things that we can't possibly understand and live under someone else's thumb, because it's easier than thinking for yourself. It's easier than thinking for yourself. So that brings me to the second reason that people make bad decisions or believe the media, the government, their doctors, whatever it is, their teachers, because all of these are places where we get bad information, right? But we believe them and refuse to look at alternative options or alternative thought processes or alternative belief systems because we're lazy. So that's the second thing, laziness. It's easier to believe what someone told you than to do the work of figuring out if they were right. It's easier to let someone else make a decision for us and then blame them if that decision isn't the right decision, or if things go bad, or if it doesn't work. It's easier to allow them to be a scapegoat. It's easier to believe that someone else wants to take care of us. It's easier to believe that someone else has our best interest at heart, whether they do or not, because we don't want to take personal responsibility. So my thought that I leave you with today, in today's things you don't want to hear, is own it. Own it. Be responsible. Have some personal responsibility. Figure things out yourself. Do the damn research. Dig, and dig some more. Don't take anything anyone says to you at face value. It's your job to figure it out, to discern it, to decide if it's relevant to you in your life. Does this apply to me? Does this make sense? Take the time and own it. Because if you do something simply because someone else told you to, you're still at fault if you did the wrong thing. We as kids always were told, when we said, well, Joey did it, so I did it, when we got in trouble at school, Mom and Dad's response was always, so if Joey jumped off a bridge, would you? Yet there are millions of people around the world, hundreds of millions of people around the world, wearing a mask right now, impairing their own breathing, lowering their own immune system, weakening their body, lowering their oxygenation, damaging their brain cells, more likely to get a virus that they're trying to avoid by wearing a mask because some dumb asshole who has zero authority said you should. Like, I'm flabbergasted by this. But again, this isn't just about the mask. It applies to everything in your life. Stop letting other people make decisions for you. And that's where I'm going to leave it with today's breakfast.